BZA meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If anybody has their cell phone on, please turn it off at this time. Okay, roll call, please.
Carrie Steele. Bill Crawford.
Here.
Jeff Fisher.
Here.
Darren Price. Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Westling.
Present.
And myself.
Sure. All righty.
I'm present. Why didn't I call your name? Oh, I skipped over you. Leota King. Present.
Okay. Looks like first on the agenda is a public hearing for petition number 15446.
But one thing is make clear to everyone right here is due to unforeseen circumstances, we do have a quorum. So we have a 5-person board, so we do have a quorum. So we are to, and under Indiana code, what's required when you have that, the majority needs to be of the entire board. So it would have to be unanimous with those that are here this evening to approve any other petitions. And likewise, it didn't need to be unanimous to actually reject the petitions. So it's just want everybody to know that's what needs to happen this evening.
For clarification purposes, unanimous, not 2-1 tonight, since we only have 3, it's 3. It's got to be a quorum of the entire board to make a decision either way.
And they can't.
You said that so much better than I.
No, you said it wonderfully, I just wanted to make sure.
They can or can't choose to wait until there's a full.
Well, they could, but there probably isn't a reason, because if it only ends up if it doesn't end up a unanimous decision, the decision would have to wait until next month for it.
Okay.
The decision
I just wanted to clarify that too.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. We now declare the public hearing open and ready for business.
And I'm just going to read that off for 2
I will
minutes.
tell you that I have had a board member text me that they are 2 minutes out, so if we could maybe take care of any any other type of business prior to that.
There's not much, but we could do the director's
We
report.
could do the director's report.
That should take 10 seconds.
Well, that'll give me a chance to fill my water bottle.
Okay, everybody looked at the director's report.
What's your pills? Yes. Oh, I don't call Charles.
I'll take a motion on the director's report if everybody's had a chance to look at it and understand it.
I'll make a motion to approve the director's report.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries, director's report. Good. Well, we could go ahead and do the adjournment while we're waiting. And it looks like the 2 things that we are going to have tonight, we're going to need to go ahead and wait for a minute. So if anybody wants to step out and get a drink of water or something like that, you're welcome to do that.
Well, since we have different groups of people right here, and we usually don't have this many people, but, okay, could everybody here who's, here for the East Baseline Road presentation, introduce yourselves, please, so that way you'll familiarize yourself with the board members before the hearing.
Sure, I'm David Pike, Pike Legal Group, PLLC, and I'm here representing the applicants. And Joe Rogers is with me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, now then, introduce yourselves, the people from Dinsmore.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Vance, I'm attorney at Dinsmore and Shoal, and I'm here on behalf of SBA Communications.
And you're here for both.
I'm here for both.
Yes. Yep, and this will be for the second hearing. It's going to be the ones on East Alcoina Road.
Mr. McDaniel, members of the board, my name's Matt Price. I'm with the Denton's Law Firm, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Parallel Infrastructure and their telecommunications facility.
I'm Nate Meyer with PBM Wireless. I'm the applicant for the Parallel Infrastructure project.
All right. Okay. You can now alter your attendance sheet.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, Carrie, we just opened up the public hearing on number 15446. It's for a special exception for the transmission tower at
But
4341 East Baseline Road. You want to come up and explain to us what's going on?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the recorded, just a second, let me see if I can get my fancy stopwatch going here. For the recorded record, my name is David Pike. I'm a principal with Pike Legal Group, PLLC, P.O. Box 369, Shepherdsville, Kentucky. The rest of our contact data is of record in the somewhat voluminous documentation that we've been dumping on the planning staff over the past few weeks. A couple of prefatory comments. One of them is that we have provided you with a hearing distribution binder. Everything in that was previously filed in full compliance with your procedural pre-filing rules. They're just duplicate copies for your reference, and I'll be referring to them by tab number during my presentation. The only thing that was not pre-filed is a hard copy of this PowerPoint presentation. I included that just to additionally memorialize what we're doing, although I know it's recorded by your video system. With your permission, with my aging eyes, I'm going to step over. Can I step over here? Will that be all right, Counselor? I would be remiss if I did not begin my presentation by thanking Bill McDaniel and his team for all their hard work and assistance in getting this filed and also getting all the additional documentation that we've submitted filed. It is no accident that we got a staff recommendation. We worked very hard to get that staff recommendation to make sure that we met all of your requirements, state requirements, and federal requirements. Also like to indicate that Matt Shirk is here with us today. Matt, would you raise your hand? He, along with his father Dennis, are the owners of Elm Valley Farms. They're our lessor and will be the people directly benefiting as lessor if we're lucky enough to receive your approval here this evening. An additional factor that I think I need to state up front. This case is unusual when it comes to BZA cases for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it's a cell tower, it is subject to unique state and federal laws. It is important that as a preface, I say that you should follow the advice of your attorney in connection with those issues. But because these cases are so unique, I think it's incumbent upon us to spend a few minutes talking about those unique state and federal laws that make this special exception different from other special exceptions. Now, the criteria are still the same, but there's a federal and state overlay that goes with this that in many cases restricts what the board can and cannot consider. So we'll take a little bit of time dealing with that today within your time limits, of course. Kind of one of the first, and of course the other thing I'm going to indicate up front is that I've had experience in case after case after case after case with a competing cell tower company called SBA that appears at these hearings in an effort to try to thwart the construction of them in order to maintain their sole ability to provide those services. They have a representative here tonight. I've been down this road many times, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that unless and until your attorney or the chairman calls me off. Now, I'm going to water it down somewhat from what I was originally going to do based on some advice that I received from your planning staff, but it's still here in this presentation so that if I need it in rebuttal, I've got it and it's available to use. And I'll reserve any time that's left at the end for that purpose. So first of all, of course, under Indiana law, one of the things that's different is that after 10 days, our application is deemed complete by operation of law. Of course, fortunately, in this case, your planning staff has also found it to be complete and, of course, has made a recommendation for approval this evening, which we're very gratified to receive. And, of course, we've met all of your filing deadlines scrupulously associated with this application, and it's our understanding that those filing restrictions will be enforced as to anything else that might be tendered this evening. Now, initially, as I said, in some ways this case is different, but in some ways it's very much the same, in that you're going to be working in connection with the criteria for a special exception that you considered in lots of other types of cases. Now, we've tendered a highly detailed suggested list of findings that are included in your binder. I'll reference it specifically in a few minutes, which helps itemize all of those points so that I don't have to deal with it all in my presentation tonight, mercifully, from your perspective, perhaps. But that's the fundamental job. And if we are fortunate enough for you to want to vote in our favor, it is always possible for you to reference those draft findings if that's the approach that you wish to take after consulting with your legal counsel. It's also worth noting that there's a variety of Indiana laws which come into play here, which specifically restrict what the board can and cannot request and can and cannot consider, including things like our designated service, our customer demand, our service quality, or our desired signal strength at a particular location. All of those things under Indiana law are off the table for consideration this evening. Now, we're of course gratified at some public support that we've received, including this letter from Dan Parker, who's with the Fayette County Economic Development Group, who's indicated his support for the new facility as being something that would be good for the community as a whole, not just for AT&T customers. Now, let's talk about what the status quo is here. The status quo in this situation is we have a set of antennas located on a tower that is owned by SBA. It is an aging, ancient tower by any definition. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we can no longer keep our antennas there. We have to move them to a new facility based on a wide range of factors, first ones being economic, but also being the logistical problems that are posed by placing antennas on that tower based on it being maxed out in terms of capacity and its age, meaning any new additions by us or any new carrier or local provider that wanted to have access requires structural modifications of the tower so it doesn't become overloaded and illegal. Also, sharp increases in rent that I'll document in a moment. Other one-time costs that are almost completely discretionary by the lessor under our current lease agreement. All of that creates delays and problems preventing us from providing the quality of service locally that we want to provide. Now, state statutes specifically identify economic burden as a reason for disallowing a co-location, meaning that it's not reasonably available. It's also worth noting that you don't have any local regulations which require co-location, or indeed any tower location regulations. So as a result, we think, based on the argument I'm going to present, that we're on sound legal grounds here today. There is a massive and truly massive rent disparity between what SBA does on a daily basis in site after site after site with us versus what Tillman will do. The rent's over twice as much, and that amounts to over $1 million over a 20-year period. That's in addition to all of the logistical and review delays that are associated with having to do lease amendments, having to do discretionary studies that SBA requires, and the delays associated with all that, not to mention the need to reinforce the existing tower in order to try to find structural capacity for the additional service, antennas, and the like that we want to provide. This is an old tower, 1994. Let's put that in perspective. Bill Clinton was in his first term as president. No one had heard of Monica Lewinsky, and Facebook would not exist for another decade. That tower is that old. Now, what we are proposing, and of course it is also maxed out, We provided you with structural reports that are signed and stamped by an Indiana licensed engineer saying it's already over 100% in terms of its structural capacity. Now, it's of course also worth noting that SBA provided some counter documentation, but did not provide the actual structural that they mentioned. Also, that report is not signed and sealed by an engineer. A check of the name that signed it indicates that they're not on the engineer licensing list for the state of Indiana. I'll leave it to you to determine why that might have been the case. Now, this new tower will have the ability to not only support our antennas, but to support the antennas of multiple additional companies with no structural modifications and no delays. Now, that's not just other wireless providers. It would be things like your fire department, your police department, your ham radio operators, you name it. This new modern tower will have loads of additional capacity available. Now, this is not an isolated incident. This happens at hearing after hearing after hearing. And I'm going to soft pedal this now, but if I need to come back to it, I will in rebuttal. Now, at this point, it is wholly inappropriate for SBA to ask for more negotiations. We provided written documentation of our request and demand that they renegotiate over 2 years ago in the materials that we filed with you. And during that time, nothing, no movement. But they're going to come tonight and say, we're ready to talk. And under federal law and state law, speed is essential in connection with these applications. Indeed, there's a time deadline that's associated with them under Indiana state statutes. Now, we provided you with at least 19 other incidents of this type of behavior on the part of Tillman, on the part of SBA, and the list grows longer by the day. Now, economic burden, as I indicated, is a justification. Federal law has quotations like refusing to consider cost also allows the owners of the potential alternative sites to act as monopolists, which is expressly counter to the goals of the Telecommunications Act. It's also worth noting that other agencies in other states that have dealt with SBA repeatedly are brutal in their characterization of them as competitors, saying things like, SBA is a competitor with an interest in keeping tower rents high by limiting the number of towers. Unreasonable and excessive fees for rent on a tower have the potential to divert resources that could otherwise be used to invest in expanding wireless networks. The Kentucky Public Service Commission is under no illusion that SBA's request to intervene is anything other than an attempt to protect its monopoly as the owner of the only tower in the area. Those decisions are not in any way binding on you, but they're from an agency that has dealt with them over and over and over again in exactly this set of factual circumstances. Now, we provided you with multiple cases of late in which the agency considered these arguments and turned them down flat, including Clark County, Indiana, Robertson County, Tennessee, Christian County, Kentucky, Barron County, Kentucky, and 15 other counties under the jurisdiction of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. Those are just the cases I've done in which this has been run against us. Now, we provided you with a copy of our search area where the tower has to be located. You've seen this in connection with prior cell tower placements. This is where the tower has to go in order for it to be integrated into our existing network. We've also documented our need. This is what this would look like if our antennas have to be taken down off the existing SBA tower. And my apologies for the typo, that should be with a site showing the dramatic improvement in coverage. Of course, that's essentially the same coverage that we are getting now from the SBA tower, but without our upgraded services that we can't offer without doing structural upgrades of the SBA tower so it will remain standing. We've given you a copy of our site plan. This is a 3-carrier tower with loads of additional capacity for new providers and all the capacity we will need to provide upgraded services. Now, since property values sometimes come up in connection with these cases, we brought an expert witness with us this evening who pre-filed his report. His name is Glenn Katz. Would you raise your hand, Glenn? Of course, he has every professional designation offered by the Appraisal Institute. He's the current education chairman for Region 5 of the Appraisal Institute, which includes Indiana, and he finds that this facility will have no adverse effect on real estate values. I'm trying to be expeditious here. This is kind of like the old Federal Express commercials, if you remember those. Now, Federal Telecommunications Law. This is not a scenario where I'm saying I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help you. I'm not. But what this is it's important to recognize that this is one of the reasons why these cases are fundamentally different legally from other types of special exceptions. In this instance, the goal of the law is to accelerate the deployment of wireless services. Delay is the enemy of the federal law and the state law, which places express deadlines associated with the consideration of these cases. It's also important to note that under federal law, things like aesthetics, whether you like the way the tower looks and the like, are irrelevant, and under federal law in this state cannot be considered. I've already talked a little bit about the Indiana code restrictions, and they're all listed here for you. And again, your legal counsel is in the best possible position to advise you concerning those terms. We've taken great pains to meet all the requirements of your local zoning code, but again, remember, you have no local zoning regulations dealing with tower placement or with requiring co-location. Now, special exception criteria. This is the meat of the legalities associated with what you're doing, and if we're fortunate enough for you to decide to vote in our favor and allow construction of this facility, the findings that you would need to make. They're located at tab L of the materials that I've distributed to you. They are based upon all the facts and circumstances that are proven by the documentation that we previously submitted to you in connection with this case. And I've gone through in my PowerPoint presentation, without having to list them all now, we've listed all of those in tab L, and of course that's a document that was pre-filed, and it's our understanding that your staff distributed it to you prior to this public hearing. As you can see, we go through each of them chapter and verse, with a wide range of findings, all of which are also listed in the materials that you have in front of you. And if there are questions on those, of course, or any others, I'll be glad to try to answer them. I'm in the home stretch at this point. At tab M of the materials that I provided you is a study from the Federal Communications Commission documenting that 70% of all 911 calls are now made wirelessly. 70%. Hold that statistic in mind for a moment, and then you go to tab N of the materials that we distributed to you. That's a study conducted by the National Health Consortium, which is the definitive study of how Americans communicate. It's necessary for them to do randomized studies in health analyses. Now, as part of that, the most recent one finds that 68% of all adults live in households with only a wireless phone, and 79.1% of all children are growing up in homes like that. Now, when you remember the previous statistics of 70% of emergency calls being made wirelessly, it shows why it is critical that we have the ability to upgrade and improve our services constantly. That when the technology is available, we have to be able to deploy it on a cost-effective basis without delays that are created by exorbitant lease and leasing provisions, all of which slows us down and makes it harder for us to provide the services that the customers in this community need. One of those services, which is not currently being provided based on loading issues, but will be provided on the new tower, is Firstnet. It's directly referenced in the letter from the Economic Development Authority Director that I referenced at the beginning of my presentation. This provides a unified command structure for government employees and key decision makers and first responders that can be activated anytime that there is an emergency, reserving adequate capacity for them. Right now, it's not here. It will be deployed from day one on the new tower because we will have the structural capacity there to do it without having to make alterations. At the end of the day, part of this kind of comes down to some fundamental questions, and it's whether or not we're going to embrace the idea that competition is good or competition is bad in our society. I think you know where I stand on that after my presentation. Competition is a good thing. What's being advocated by SBA in this proceeding shortly will be a track that is designed to perpetuate their ability to be the sole provider and to not provide the structural capacity not only that we need, but that other carriers and other people in this community may need as well. Competition's a good thing. And it's my hope that the board will embrace that value with me. At this point, what I'd like to do is introduce all of our filings to date, including the materials that I've been referencing, although they're not new exhibits. So that maybe one of these binders, since I've referenced it, can make it into the administrative record if possible. This community deserves the best possible wireless service. SBA doesn't have any customers in this community. We have thousands. We take that responsibility seriously. We hope that you're going to remove roadblocks that keep us from being able to provide the quality of service that we very much want to provide. And I am under time. Any remaining time I'd like to reserve for rebuttal. If there's any questions, either I or some of the more knowledgeable people I brought with me will be glad to try to field them.
At this time, I would ask that the board accept Mr. McDaniel's copy of the binder into the record. It's already a part of the file. We have all the documents that are proposed in here.
This way I got them all in one place.
I move to accept the Bill McDaniel's binder from, make sure I get it right, is it Pike?
Pike Legal, yeah.
Pike Legal into the official record.
Second.
Okay, motion made and properly seconded to accept the binder. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Anyone else want to speak on that behalf? Okay, time for the demonstrate. I'm assuming.
As I mentioned earlier, my name is Aaron Vance. I'm an attorney with Dinsmore and Scholl. My address for the record is 211 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 1800, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. And, you know, out of the gate, I can say that as SBA, we're pretty used to being beat up on in the course of these hearings and meetings, but calling something from 1994 ancient hit pretty close to home. It's a little personal, you know, that's not much, you know, I'm as old as that tower and I don't feel ancient. So tonight I'm here to register the objections of my client, SBA Communications, and not only one matter, but two different matters concerning two separate entities through which AT&T is seeking to build new towers. And I'll be brief as I present it to you all materials and Mr. McDaniel has so, you know, gratefully put into the binders and that has been entered into the record. I really want to color in everything that has been said tonight about economic burden, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my time. So, while they claim the need for a new tower for their capabilities is necessary and that SBA cannot provide that for them or is unwilling to negotiate that, that is just simply untrue. AT&T has engaged with multiple companies to embark on this strategy of building new towers directly parallel to SBA's towers. For example, currently SBA has a tower that is going to be 0.3 of a mile from this proposed tower, and this is occurring all across Indiana, and as Mr. Pike pointed out, across states of Kentucky, Mississippi, Kansas, where SBA is located. And you know, we don't always lose. We've actually seen success in places like Jasper County, but we're fielding these through Jasper County, Posey County, Vanderbilt County, and now tonight in Fayette County. And this latest round is really the most interesting because it shows the length that AT&T is going to not engage with us as a business partner, but to sidestep that completely when SBA, and not solely in the last 2 years, has continued to offer AT&T the opportunity to renegotiate its leases with us site by site. The other side of that story is they want a carte blanche opportunity to renegotiate all of their leases. And if competition's key SBA can't do that due to market variation. But it has to be said too, that engaging with multiple various companies is less economically burdensome than engaging with their own current provider and lessor, whom has offered, not just tonight, but up to this point in multiple iterations, the opportunity to renegotiate and offer a market rate when it's brought to the table and substantiated. So really, as it pertains to the economic burdens that AT&T claims exist, it really is employing a burden shifting approach and shifting the burden of what it really means to be a good business partner and to engage in business negotiations onto the community of Connersville and Fayette County in the form of unnecessary cell phone towers all over the landscape of this community. Here and in the second application makes that evident. So, like I said, I'll be brief. The letter that we submitted contains multiple exhibits on behalf of SBA and is now in the record, and it outlines all of SBA's objections. First, SBA's current towers provides comparable coverage to this planned tower, as evidenced by submitted RF maps, virtually similar. Each existing tower is in fact structurally adequate. Recent structural analysis make that clear. Each tower can accommodate AT&T's needs. It can accommodate their ability to provide 5G and FirstNet with reconfiguration and simple modifications. And most notably and most importantly, SBA is willing to consider a market adjustment to each tower's lease rate, as is outlined in the letter from the site marketing manager, Chuck Hills. So with all of that in mind, it is just apparent that the only benefit actually to be derived is not for everybody, but for AT&T. These marginal benefits that allow them to sidestep their, I would say, obligation to negotiate with us in good faith, as we have often tried to negotiate with them, shouldn't be foisted upon the community, but needs to be continued around the negotiating table with us. And with that, I have no further remarks, and thank you all for your time. Until I see you for the next one.
Questions?
I have a question with it. So I want to make sure I understand, and maybe this question will probably be addressed by maybe both sides, but outside of aesthetics, is there a reason why having two towers is bad?
It's unnecessary, it's superfluous. The precedent that it may set to have parallel structures all across the community when it's not just AT&T at the table. There are towers in this county hosted by T-Mobile, Hobart, other companies. If this is going to be the standard by which we move forward, where we scrap a perfectly good, usable tower that has been approved with a special exception, it almost throws the whole idea of needing a zoning code and land use ordinances out the window. It's a matter of precedent. It's not just aesthetics, but it sets the tone if we just want to throw away something that's been previously approved, is in working order, and can accommodate what is necessary. Like I said, what would be the point of the zoning code if we were to move forward with that tonight?
Okay, I guess so, and I want to make sure I understand the dynamics here, and I'm going to make a parallel, and we'll see how close I am. But so when I was looking for a building to put my office in, small business owner, and I looked at an older home that was in a business district that I could convert. I looked at, and this was all to rent, right? So I would be dealing with rent here. There was a company that was willing to build what I wanted, at least from them, or there was an office space sort of already existing in a larger building. So house, office setting, new construction. I don't understand how my wanting potentially to build a new structure, like to me that seems like the same thing that AT&T is doing. If they want a new structure for their business, I don't know why we should force them to move into an old house. Is that, am I making the right analogy then?
I would say there are some key differences. I mean, businesses and offices, where they're placed and where you may want to move into don't require you to get a special exception. This community has set a policy in its zoning code and its ordinance to say that we need to take a deeper dive and a harder look at these kinds of questions and not just let them go up wherever they may go up. And because of that, they're distinct in my mind for that reason solely, is that this requires a little bit more introspection.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Rebuttal? There's a,
I wasn't going to say any, or is it all right to?
well, let me ask
I'm sorry.
first, are there anyone else that wants to speak against this or for it? Okay, all right, go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything until your analogy, and I'd like to quote you going forward in future cases. It's elegant. The question is, do you force us to move into an old dilapidated house, or we get the ability, in order to provide better service, faster, cheaper, build a new building that fits our needs? And I think it really comes down to that. This community doesn't have specific tower regulations. Ultimately, I think we're entitled to be judged not based on what SBA wants, but do we meet the special exception criteria? I think that's the question. And I think we've cited more than enough justification at tab L to meet that requirement. So with your name is what, ma'am?
It's actually Carrie Simpkins.
Okay, Carrie, with your permission, I'm going to quote you going forward, without attribution, so that I can take credit
That's
for it.
for the record, I went with the dilapidated house.
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't think that really helps your story, so.
But I think it's a solid analogy. We appreciate your consideration of this. I know these cases are unusual, and it's not the standard, but we're thankful for this time your staff has put in and that you've put in as well this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Any questions?
Any other comments from the gallery?
I'd like to make do I need to step up?
Yes, if
Sir,
you would,
please.
please.
You can come up, state your name in the record, even if you are a city council member.
Clarence Porter, live on the east side of Connersville. This kind of is a twofold thing for his site and for this site. My question is the RF frequency, health-wise. I understand that it's supposed to be a mile from residence, and that frequency can harm any living being or animals within a mile. I hope somebody here can clarify all that for us. I'm sure you guys aren't in that
I'm not
field.
exactly qualified probably to answer that part of it.
But I'm sure somebody here could answer that question for me. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's coming.
Think about that. Your guys' pleasure. You're welcome to ask if he wants to answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, I think your attorney would be in the best possible position to opine on the fact that that is one of the issues which this board is prohibited from considering. Once the FCC has licensed a site, that's the only issue, and we've certified that we'll meet those licensing requirements. And have them.
Thank you. Okay, all right. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on petition number 15446. Any discussion amongst the board?
Do you have a suggestion on?
If depending on the board's pleasure, if we were to vote against it, I don't think we have a proposed finding of facts. We'd have to make our own. So if you make a motion, give a very elaborate motion. If you're in favor of my recommendation, as the board has had in front of it, there's a tendered findings of fact from Pike Legal that I find sufficient, so long as the motion, whoever makes the motion agrees with the terms in that findings. But I would recommend if that were the case, that we use their findings of fact.
And then I would suspect then it's probably then for the record, since this will be part of the record in addition to my document, to then also sign off on this with the chair.
Is that that
Yeah,
It's on,
Page
it's
five.
under
Number L?
L.
yeah,
Correct.
page 5 and L.
Yep. Okay.
It's page 1 and L.
Well, the signatures, page
Okay,
5.
correct.
I'll move to approve the special exception to the tower. Do I need the code number? Do I need the number?
No,
Any motion?
no.
Move to approve the tower at issue, utilizing the findings of fact that were provided by Pike Legal under tab L of the previously admitted Pike Legal binder.
Okay. I'll second it. All right. Motion made and properly seconded to accept the petition. And we'll do a roll call, please.
Carrie Simpkins,
Yes.
Bill Crawford,
Yes.
Jeff Fisher,
Yes.
Leota King.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
So also sign this, please.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, thank you folks for your confidence. We'll proceed with construction promptly. And my father, I started practicing law with my father many years ago, even before this SBA's tower was constructed, to date me. And he had a great saying. He said, if you've won, leave immediately before anyone changes their mind. So with your permission, we will exit.
Not
Thank
going
you.
to offend anyone by doing so, right?
Well, some of you have some pretty significant drives. Doesn't Tony have the longest?
You get that?
I get this, but, yeah. And then both of you sign the actual, the signature findings, the staff report. Both of you will sign those.
Thank you.
Let you both sign those, pass that down to me.
Staff report, signature findings.
Here's the other one I signed right here. You want this one?
Yeah, also the non-minutes,
No minutes.
the non-minutes minutes.
This guy.
All right,
Sorry about that delay.
okay. All right. Onward and upward.
All right, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing, public hearing on petition number 15459, a special exception for a tower at 595 East South Corner Road.
And if you could, and if, also if you have any of the, if any of these items are new, that if you could also please hand, if you can get a copy of those also to the representative from, from Dismore. And so if you could explain if any of these are actually new, what's actually submitted to us, so we'll have that in the, the recorded record.
Okay. Can I pass some stuff out first?
Yeah, we already passed out things with
Okay.
some things, so if you have anything additional, because what your attorney brought is we passed those out, so if there's anything in addition to that.
Okay. I have some things that are, it's stuff you already have, it's just to make my presentation a little quicker.
Okay,
I'll get there.
Mouth here.
Ladies first. My mom and wife would insist.
thank you. Oh, this is just your presentation.
Yeah, it's just my presentation. It's, you have all this, it's just to give you something to focus on if you have a million papers.
Another tree.
Constantly the same thing.
I'm not as old as Mr. Pike, so you know I don't like to use computers.
That's okay. Makes it simpler for us old people.
That's right. My name is Nate Meyer. I'm with PBM Wireless Services LLC, at 6869 Windagina Drive in Brownsburg, Indiana, 46112. And I'm here to represent Parallel Infrastructure. I put the application materials together that you all have received. And they're gonna build this tower, assuming we can get approved for AT&T's use to help improve the quality of services going forward, especially a little closer to Connersville than where the other previous site was. So basically what I've done is I just put together real quick, I just want to introduce the project, and then Matt Price is here and he'll talk a little more about some of the other things. So Exhibit A is a zoning map. We're located in the agricultural area, and it's overlaid, as you can see, over top of an aerial photo. The star is the location of the proposed site. And we are kind of centrally located here in this large field. The river's over here on this side. Downtown Connersville is up here where we're at this meeting. Vine Street's over here. And I wanted to let you see that. And the next photo is an aerial photo, just to see that this site is located a very far distance from any other homes or businesses or anything like that. It is next to a Duke Energy substation. We like to try to, if we can, locate these next to other utility structures, and we did that here. The address of the site, which I did forget to mention, is 595 East Alquina Road, here in Connersville. Alquina, thank you. I apologize.
Okay, you're not one of us,
The next is just the overall site plan that's in the material. All this is in the material that you already have. You can see that we're going to use an existing access that goes back to the substation. And just before you get to the substation, we're going to drop in with a 100 by 100 foot lease area to construct a 309 foot self-support tower. Next page shows a sketch from the drawings that you already have of that tower, and that tower will be co-locatable for other users, in addition to AT&T. And then the final page is just a expression that this will help improve 911 coverage for residents in the area, because one thing that it will also have is Firstnet services. Firstnet's a national program that AT&T is heading up for Homeland Security, basically, and first responders, that they can become a part of in local communities, fire, police, EMS. And if everything else goes down in the country in the event of some crazy emergency, Firstnet is supposed to be up and running for all the first responders to be able to use and communicate across the country. So that's my part of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions now or later, and I'll bring up Matt Price.
So will there be a generator on that site?
A generator. I believe there will be a generator.
I can't remember if it was or not.
I don't want to tell you wrong.
I'm just curious. I know that the other one had a generator on site, but I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah, they normally do.
It probably
I
does.
believe it does. Here, there's a drawing that looks like it does have a generator.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And those typically will cycle once a month just for maintenance, and then just run in the event of a power outage. Any other questions right now? Okay. Matt?
Thank you, good evening. My name is Matt Price. I'm an attorney with Denton's, which is headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a member of the Indiana Bar. And pleased to be here this evening. Represent Parallel Infrastructure, and it's a unique situation in that we're following a matter that has such significant similarities. I too have dealt with SBA over the years, and just to pick up a little bit on what Mr. Pike said in the previous matter, SBA is a real estate trust that leases tower space. And so they make their money by leasing essentially vertical real estate. And so a principal objective of their business plan is to eliminate competition. When they eliminate competition, then they can continually raise their rates, and they publish that data to their shareholders annually in their reports that they file with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it's very well documented that their business practice is not to be cooperative with carriers. It's not to negotiate in good faith. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is to eliminate the possibility of good faith negotiation. I enjoyed very much the analogy given in the prior line of questioning, because in that analogy, the elements that were set forth involved choice. There was a choice for that business owner to locate their business inside an older property, a newer property, or something in between. And what that required each one of those would-be landlords to do was to bring their best offer. If they were going to win her business, then they needed to have something that was attractive to her as a business owner. What SBA would have you believe is that they'll negotiate in good faith so long as AT&T has no alternative. And that's the argument that you're being asked to accept tonight relative to SBA's proposal. And it's wrong as a matter of law, and it's wrong as a matter of common sense. And I know that as a Hoosier, and I know you do as well.
It's called a monopoly.
It's called a monopoly. In fact, the previous attorney, Mr. Pike, cited a recent decision from the Kentucky Public Service Commission. I'd like to read the quote in full. He only cited a part of it. He, like all of us here today, or the commission, like all of us here today, understood that the commission is under no illusion that SBA's request to intervene in this case is anything other than an attempt to protect its monopoly as the owner of the only tower in the area. SBA is not a customer in the area or a property owner. SBA is a competitor with an interest in keeping tower rents high by limiting the number of towers, limiting the options available. This runs counter to one of the purposes of the Telecommunications Act, which is to promote competition. And they're seeking to eliminate that competition. Indiana's legislature recognized that this could be a potential possibility when they wrote laws reflecting how towers are to be sited. And so they specifically provide that an applicant need only show that co-location is prevented by an economic burden put on them in order to prove that they need not locate on a pre-existing tower. Now, that's at Indiana Code 8-1-32.3-20A3. That's the Indiana Code provision. Now, I want to tell you that that provision is meant to apply to communities that actually have a requirement to co-locate in the first place. Fayette County does not have such a requirement to co-locate. But even if they did, AT&T would be excused here because they have submitted an affidavit that states on its face, which has not been countered by any representative of SBA, and it won't be tonight, that the rents over the next 20 years under what SBA has made available to them are over $1.5 million more than what Parallel Infrastructure is offering. So the market rate, if you will, is what Parallel is offering. And SBA will not negotiate if we have a choice. They will not. So that enough about SBA. So that brings us to kind of the fundamental question, which is, do we meet the findings under the ordinance for this tower, which AT&T and Parallel Infrastructure have applied for? And the county has an excellent set of findings, including a very unique one, which I'll address at the very end. But it asks the question of, will this enhance public health, safety, and general welfare? And it will, by providing critical infrastructure and technology platform that will benefit the residents here. One of the real success stories of wireless technology across our country has been when the pandemic hit and many folks were forced to go to school remotely or work remotely or work from home. The wireless infrastructure was present to be able to do that on a moment's notice, and that will continue if this tower is approved. It's also part of the Firstnet network, which was described earlier, which is a dedicated set of infrastructure that is available to first responders as part of a program which AT&T offers nationwide. The second question is whether it will substantially diminish and impair property values. Like the study presented in the prior case, our own personal research indicates that it will not. We provided, and you have in front of you, we compared with regard to the state-owned tower, which is east of us, we compared the assessed valuations of homes that were immediately adjacent to that tower with the assessed valuations of homes that were half a mile or more down the road away from the tower. And what it showed is that the square footage assessed values are actually in favor of the homes that were built around the tower, so that the tower does not have an adverse impact on home values. And that's been shown in study after study over the years. Third question is whether the special exception will impede the normal and orderly development of the area. We submit that it will not. This is over a 117-acre parcel. It is well removed from any residential uses. It's using an existing access drive immediately adjacent to a utility substation. It does not impact the ability of the property around it to be developed in accordance with its zoning. Fourth is whether it's equipped with adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities, and it is. Available utilities are there, present at the site. Again, we're using the existing access drive, and so we meet that finding as well. Item E has to do with whether there has been sufficient steps to provide for adequate ingress and egress. These facilities are visited only once or twice a month for maintenance purposes, so it does not create traffic congestion of any kind, and they're readily equipped with the existing access drive, so we feel like we meet that one. The next one is whether the special exception will contravene the principles of reinvestment, revitalization, and the avoidance of unintended consequences set forth in your comprehensive plan. In my experience, this is a unique finding, and I think a very appropriate one. Your community has a very well-crafted comprehensive plan. And we believe that, and what we say in our findings is that this technology will serve to promote reinvestment in your community, both in a new development and in areas where you'd like to see new redevelopment of an existing parcel or an abandoned parcel. It maintains the high level of technology that new investment of any kind will expect as they come to the community. So we believe we meet that criteria as well. For each one of those reasons, we believe we meet the findings. We feel like we've demonstrated that that there is an economic burden to continuing business with SBA, and that this proposal will not negatively impact anyone in the surrounding vicinity, and is very well placed as far as a beneficial use of an existing parcel immediately adjacent to utility use already. So for all those reasons, we would respectfully request your approval this evening of our special exception, and Nathan and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Administrator?
So I'll try to be even more brief in this one and not rehash a lot of my previous points earlier, but for the purposes of the record, I will note that we, SBA, submitted a similar letter with multiple exhibits on behalf of SBA into the record that Mr. McDaniel put in the binders, that again outlines that SBA's current tower here, now, let's see, 0.8 miles away, provides comparable coverage as evidenced by submitted RF maps, is structurally adequate, and this is confirmed by a recent structural analysis. and can accommodate AT&T's ability to provide 5G and FirstNet, this time without any modifications. And again, SBA is willing to consider a market adjustment to the market rate if AT&T wants to continue to negotiate with us. And the words, and I'll come to that point because we talk a lot about choice tonight. And, you know, AT&T is clearly not afraid of choice, and this time they've just chosen to, you know, paint SBA in a bad light. But in the past, and as recently as November 19th, 2021, SBA has executed an amendment to the lease they have with SBA. They have been willing to negotiate with us as recent as 5 months ago. Only for the purposes of this hearing is SBA this obstinate entity detached from the Connersville community in the state of Indiana. I want to point out that this tower would be the second tower, this time in a more developed portion of the community near Connersville, that SBA has far from a monopoly on providing towers for cell phone coverage or similar services in the state of Indiana. As I mentioned previously, there are other providers in this community that have towers, and, you know, we're not the only ones in Indiana or Kentucky or any other states. And I want to make particular note that both applicants have hammered this line from a Kentucky Public Service Commission opinion, and it just seems very incongruent to what is occurring here and tonight. This pointed statement of a monopoly is far from the truth, and ultimately in the decisions that are made here, it needs to be considered that a state public service corporation approaches these issues very differently than a local zoning board. And because of that, I would diminish the weight of that opinion. And what it means is you will make your decisions tonight when, in reality, SBA is still at the table, ready to negotiate, and wants to continue to be a good partner and a good steward in this community as well. Thank you.
Could you go ahead and state your name just for the
Oh,
record?
I'm sorry, I probably should have done that again. Aaron Vance, Dinsmore Cholo LLP.
Okay.
And I'm now a recent Hoosier, 211 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 1800, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. A new transplant from Kentucky.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. All right. Any comments from anyone in the audience? State your name and address, please.
My name is Lori Moth, and I live at 535 John Street. So I'm going to be surrounded by the tower by the state police post, and then the tower over off of Alquina Road. I have several concerns. One of the concerns is, would the tower of the state police post be able to hold AT&T's weight if they added more to that tower, the safety of the residents all around that area? The second is on the Alquina side of it, when they start to dig to put the tower in, if this is approved, there is water underneath there. When they did the lift station, they had to pump water for weeks to be able to get the lift station dry to put that in. You know, they have to take that into consideration when they start digging over on the river side of this. They couldn't put the lift station on that side because it was a floodplain. How is that going to affect this tower? Is that considered a floodplain where they're wanting to put that in?
I can answer that question. No,
Okay.
it is not.
Okay.
The floodplain is to the east of where the Duke Power Station is,
Right.
then where the river bends to the north.
Mhm.
It has some fingers that go down into the farm property.
Right.
That's north of it.
That
but
comes
they-
up behind
But
our
they do
house.
not extend as far south as the proposed tower location.
Okay, all right.
And if it were the DNR, just for future reference, they'd have to go through the Indiana DNR if they choose to still locate within a floodplain, they
Right.
could with certain permits, which are
Right.
quite frankly not worth it, so they would have
Right.
located out of it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Then the additional engineering and
Yes,
construction
yeah,
cost would be
Yes, exactly. yeah.
phenomenal.
Another concern is, I know that, I've lived in that area all my life. I've lived on John Street all my life, with the exception of 6 years. So, we get a lot of white noise from, the grain towers coming down the river. We do get some white noise from the the Duke Energy Station. Are we gonna have any more increase of white noise with this tower?
Jeff, I just want to clear up a couple of questions. One of them, she mentioned that there's a water problem when they tried to build. We really can't take that into consideration. It's not up to us to decide, okay, that's a problem area to build.
Well, we could if it's not suitable, but I don't think we've encountered that issue. I don't think that's.
And then the other question was about them being able to go to another tower. That's not up to us to get into that part of it, is it?
Well, we don't have a requirement for co-location.
Right.
We can certainly, I think we have the right to discuss that, but I don't think we can compel co-location because we don't have the specific.
And I guess I was concerned too, if the state police post tower, how much more can it take to have things added onto it as well if they stay?
I don't know that we can consider that because we don't have enough information.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, we can't.
No, that's okay.
Right.
Those were just some of my
Right.
concerns,
And
so.
I'm glad you asked the questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
It's up to
Okay.
Well, you do have the opportunity for rebuttal.
I'm just.
Or other comments, yeah.
Yeah, not so much rebuttal, but I very much want to be respectful of everyone's time and the desires of the chair. It's okay.
Right, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, yeah, I was writing down the notes. The issue we have with the state police tower is we have to locate our tower within approximately 4,800 feet of the center of our search area. That search area is basically where the existing SBA tower is today. So that tower is further east of where we need to be. I can also say from personal experience in working with the potential to locate on state-owned towers is that's very difficult and not always available as a practical matter because the state police has its own limitations for security reasons. So it's definitely outside of our search area though, and that was not considered as an option. We do go through extensive permitting and geotechnical review to make sure that we can build where we're seeking to zone. But I appreciate your comments about that being perhaps outside the scope of the special exception. Then with regard to white noise, one of the benefits, and I didn't highlight this during my presentation, but one of the things about cell towers is that they are quiet. About the only noise you'll hear is the occasional run of the generator, which makes it sound similar to a residential air conditioner. It doesn't run all the time, it just runs when necessary. So it is not something that should generate noise. It does not have large, like the grain, I think you mentioned, it does not have the same geometric design. It's slender. This doesn't produce the same kind of wind noise this is a lattice structure too, so it's open to the wind, so it just doesn't generate that kind of noise.
Okay. Any questions for him? Nope. Okay. That said, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on petition number 15459. Any discussion amongst the board?
Well, the only thing I would like to say is to the point about, I agree and I agree with, and it's Gross, right, Mr. Gross? What was is it? Yeah, what? Vance, I apologize. With Mr. Vance's comments regarding the fact that, Kentucky State Regulatory's opinion on SBA's monopoly in Kentucky, I agree. I don't think that has much bearing here. But with that said, I think there was adequate information to move forward, and I would, unless there's other discussion, I make a motion to approve the tower as presented using the findings of fact found in pages 4 through 6 and its referenced exhibits and the statements of compliance for the special exception request on this proposed tower.
Get that? That's why it's recorded, right?
Yeah. Like a big
Thank goodness for
playback.
video.
Okay. All right, we got a motion made and properly second to go ahead and approve this special exception. We'll do a roll call, please.
Carrie Simpkins,
Yes.
Bill Crawford,
Yes.
Jeff Fisher,
Yes.
Leota King.
Okay. All you need to do is get with Bill and get the permit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you to everyone that was here and commented on this today. Appreciate your interest. Okay, we already did the director's report, Carrie, so we saved you from that 10 seconds.
Awesome. So move to adjourn?
There we go.
Second.
Motion made, properly second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Oh, great, thank you.
Motion carried.
Appreciate those.
The green card that didn't come back yet.
March 24th area planning meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Darren Price. Leota King.
Present.
Brian Durham.
Here.
Dale Munson.
Here.
Gary Naylor. Robert Stewart.
Here.
Brian Robb.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
Mr. Drew, he's absent. Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Wissling. And
Present.
Beverly Rude.
Okay, awesome. We have a quorum. We have minutes for the February 24th area planning meeting. I would entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, zoning code updates. You have an 11-page solar ordinance draft in front of you. We'll skip the first 2 pages because those are just definitions. Looking at page 3, midway down, we get types of solar energy systems. 2 types, roof-mounted, ground-mounted. Looking at what micro would be less than 120 square feet. Small is between 120 and 1750. Medium is between 1750 and 43,560, which is 1 acre. Large scale is between 1 acre and 10 acres. And allowable as a special exception in residential suburban A1, A2, I1, I2. And then farm scale is more than 10 acres. Allowable as a special exception in residential suburban A1, A2, I1, I2 zoning districts. Does anybody have any objections to that in the draft?
Clarification, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Is there any area that does not need a special exception?
Yes, so a residence.
Based on size.
Yeah, it's based on size. So it has to be more than, a special exception kicks in when it's more than an acre, a special exception is required.
More than an acre.
Yes. So if it's at your home, I mean, I would be hard pressed to think that anybody's house would require more than an acre of solar to, you figure the average home uses about 1,000 kilowatt hours. So your rooftop.
We'll have a special meeting on anything over an acre.
Yes.
And get an example of some other ones, of course, of the various ones from the city of Connersville and also the school corporation, which would not have triggered of a size to trigger, the special exception.
With,
Would not.
yeah, maybe the one at the ball fields, that is more than an acre. That would have triggered a special
That was
exception.
in play at the time.
That was correct. But in the future, that would have triggered the need for a public hearing for a special exception. Setbacks, the setbacks remain the same for all accessory structures. Yeah. So it's no different than building a shed on your properties. You can't have it in the front yard. If you're on a corner lot, you can have one frontage, a side frontage, if that makes sense.
Another question then, we've had them put in without any zoning regulations
Correct.
at this point. Have we ever had any complaints on the ones that's been installed so far?
Not a one.
No.
I have not had anybody complain. The only time anyone ever did was before the school corporation put theirs up. And it was someone said, I don't have to look at those when I drive by. And it wasn't somebody who even lived in the vicinity.
I don't want to look at your wife either, like, go by.
So that's the only time this person never contacted me again after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all in trouble.
Yeah.
Under C, setbacks, 75 feet from a property line, 250 feet to the nearest corner.
See, that's the farm scale.
Yeah, on a farm scale, 250 feet from the nearest residential structure. Does anybody have any objections to that,
Or general comments.
or comments about that, as far as setbacks for farm scale. Language-wise, I don't know if it should say primary structure. If somebody has a primary that's not a residence on a property, it should also be 250 feet. So if you have a non-agriculture pole barn on a property in an area, I don't know if it should also have to be 250 feet. I don't,
Like a garage, is that what you're saying?
yeah, like a,
Like a detached garage?
if that's the primary structure on the property. If it's a non-agriculture use garage in an
Of a
area
property
that
that did not have that essentially did not have a residence.
does not have a house on it.
What we talked about earlier, Brian, when you're looking at small ones, like you're looking at an acre, 2 acre, that's more for private use then. It's not gonna be something that's gonna be generated for areas.
Correct.
It'd be more than 10 acres that would be used outside the county.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because one that's, you know, say, for example, the large size is, that can conceivably be for a, you know, some other type of project, or it could be as for, whether it's, like I said, not only just the school or the city, but it could be for
The school system uses theirs for their own purpose.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And one of the keys with a lot of this is whether or not it's for commercial production. Because once you start talking about commercial production, as with anything else, the economy of scale come into play. Because there's a lot of other investments that
Have
need to
they
be
seen a
made.
big savings in energy costs since they put that in? Do we know anything about that?
I mean, I don't think there's a huge savings in energy costs. Utility rates are set by the IURC, so.
You're talking about from the school corporation?
Oh, yeah, yeah, there's been a reduction. And the city has as well.
Right.
But the savings come in after about 10 years, because it was basically they fronted the money to put those in at no cost to the city, and they're using the savings to pay for. That was one of those guaranteed energy savings contracts.
I think the question that Brian asked essentially is, do we want to protect properties that don't have a residence on them? I mean, I think that's ultimately
But contain
the question.
a structure.
Contain a structure, but not a residence. And to me, you should think about that. I think that's a good question, but it's almost, those are almost locations we want these things at, right? We would prefer them to be around barns or garages that are not with residences, so.
Power without going on the grid.
Yeah, right.
We have friends out in Utah that power their home and everything, and up on the grid, because they're way up on the mountain, and they can't even get the grid up there to them.
And then on the next, after the semicolon, it should say permitted, not agriculture. It should say from non-permitted zoning districts
Where's that?
under C, because it says non-agriculture.
Oh, okay. What did you want that?
Permitted. So from anyone that's not residential, suburban, A1, A2, I1, I2. I think we talked about that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get the language, so, yeah, like we did with that previously.
Height, so reading through this, for ground-mounted, non-farm scale, height limitation would be 15 feet, with a minimum height of 3 feet. So if you wanted ground-mounted at your house, it has to be at least 3 feet off the ground, cannot exceed 15 feet. For farm scale and large scale, it cannot exceed 30 feet when measured from the natural grade, and the 3 foot minimum would still apply.
Yeah, and well, one rationale with the 30 feet and then raises the bottom is it allows complementary, some other alternatives as far as some type of agricultural uses in there. Wouldn't be row crops, but it does have the potential then for allowing other types of uses that could make use under the bottom of it. Because typically they're going to be a racking system that moves with the sun. So then that puts it up at a level which is you can have things underneath. And One example of things that are used is, not cattle or swine, but
Sheep,
goats and sheep is a little more common. But just, it would be at a size where, of course, so then they'd have to then be set up so it changes from, the actual owner of the property would be going from paddock to paddock to paddock, rotating them through.
Another important note under height
Honey production.
is that fencing can be located inside the vegetative screening. And in fact, we would encourage that somebody put their fence inside vegetative screening, which will come later in that. I mean, I guess if somebody wanted to have fence vegetative screening solar panels, if that was their prerogative, but I mean, visually it looks better with, buffer fence solar panels, but.
Because the height of the fences for security purposes are kind of tall.
Ground mounted systems are exempt from lot coverage and impervious surfaces, and they do not count towards the maximum accessory structures. Drainage, so Fayette County Drainage Board, if it is something outside of the city limits, City of Connersville through utilities would approve any drainage if it's inside city limits.
So there's things related to drainage and erosion control, which really does need more work, a little more research on. For example, is the commissioners are the de facto drainage board. So it'd be they're comfortable what their roles are and what they would oversee, because I know it's primarily really you're just dealing with the actual county drains. But since we need to look at the drainage, what's happening with this is that be another role having to do with the county commissioners as the drainage board. If it isn't, who then is going to do the sign off? Because we don't have personnel at the SWCD anymore who could do this.
These systems, they aren't self-sufficient in the fact that they need to have a backup system in place, right?
Talking about what?
They don't store energy to you, they just transfer it.
Yeah, they just transfer. Now, one thing.
If you have a whole week of rain and, I mean, you're gonna need something to.
Well, there is something out there, they're called backup electric storage systems, called them BESS. Their structure's typically about the size of a semi-trailer. And as the cost of the production comes down, more of those get used. I think one of the ones that probably people might be most familiar with, which I remember after the hurricane with Puerto Rico to get them powered back. Those ones that were donated by, at least theoretically donated by Tesla, to help them start getting their energy production back up and then provide electricity then for Puerto Rico. And those were all linked in with the solar system. So the idea with these backup energy systems is so it gets around one of the drawbacks with either wind or also the solar is that you do have some storage on the site of the electricity.
Well, the schools probably didn't get rid of their boilers when they put the system in, correct?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
But users of it are typically anyway gonna have backup choices.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and this is all about with the farm scale anyway, with what's going into the system, into the marketplace.
Then on number 5, on page 5, buffer requirements, you're required a 25-foot planted buffer that shall be a minimum of 3 row with 4-season tree and providing 4-season screening. So a person who wanted to develop a farm or large-scale solar, it has a setback of 75 feet. You have a 25-foot buffer plus a fence. So theoretically, you would have road frontage. You could go 25 feet, put your buffer 50 feet, your fence, and your solar panels on all sides to screen any large-scale and farm-scale solar.
And one thing that was added this time around also was the idea that when you're using the plant materials, it has to do with the selection. of basically ideally native plant species because they tend to be more drought tolerant and also more, and then also native as far as supporting wildlife habitat. And the other one, of course, is the non-invasive species, and those are usually exotic species brought in from elsewhere. And those are the ones we have the most problems with. We want to avoid, the idea is that we want to avoid having different types of, we don't want the problem to spread, such as the good one right now is honeysuckle. Yeah, because
Bradford pears.
what's that?
Bradford pears.
Yeah, Bradford pears, that's another one. If you're down south, you got kudzu.
I got a question.
Sure.
Yes.
On C on that where it says must repair private drainage, should that be changed from private to all?
Okay, where's this at now?
On page 5, section 5, number C,
Oh, yeah, must repair all drainage system, yeah.
instead of just private?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
You're worried about county drains. Yeah, absolutely.
drainage system, yeah. Good call.
Clear, yep.
And under B, all components, not just the panels themselves, but any transmission line or anything related to the solar energy system is required to be 75 feet from a county ditch, tile, stream, or river. Under D, the Technical Review Committee, the model solar ordinance suggests that a technical review committee. Our rules and procedure call for a technical review committee. We don't currently have a technical review committee. It names specific people. Some of those people there's nobody in that role. There's no city engineer right now who's named on the technical review committee. So
Yeah, so that's one thing we get into is that who would be the appropriate individuals to have on the technical review committee.
I almost think a representative from the county, a representative from the city, a representative from the APC, and a representative from the BZA. Does that make sense?
Yeah, city, county,
It
APC.
can be appointed member from the elected body, or it can be a non-elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and if you want to construct in a floodway, you need approval from the Department of Natural Resources.
Would there be any danger with these things if they got flooded? I mean, you're saying you need permission, I mean. If
To
they
build
got
any
covered with
structure.
Water, would that?
Yeah. Just to build any structure in a floodway, you have to have a permit from the Department of Natural Resources. It just
Well, I understand
reiterates
it's
that
my
it's
house,
required.
but I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know these things, if there any, can they be damaged, I guess, if they get underwater, or, I mean,
Well, I think that probably comes into design as protecting the units. And the main concern would probably be the electrical components. And things along those lines, there's between burial rated cable, which is water resistant. A good one to think about is, okay, the entrance cable going up the weatherhead on a house.
well, the floodplains is something I deal with quite a bit. Of course, you got your floodplain, but you got your flood flow. Now, you could be up here and you got a
Yep.
creek here, it's floodplain.
Yep.
It could, flood flow is not gonna reach that
Yep.
house, and that could also be,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
But they still consider it floodplain because it's within that area.
yeah.
And
This section only applies to large scale and farm scale ones.
Yeah.
Those, they're gonna have so much money invested, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're gonna be smart. Yeah.
Decommissioning agreements require traffic management plan approved by either by both the county highway superintendent and the board of commissioners. A property and maintenance plan submitted along with their special exception application. Perimeter fencing for all medium, large, and farm scale. At a height not less than 8 and not more than 12 feet. No barbed wire permitted. Signage that says name of the facility, address, name and address of operator, and emergency contact information, and must provide reasonable accessibility to emergency vehicles. Permitting, so small scale rooftop, micro, ground mounts are permitted in all zoning districts. Micro solar does not require a permit. Medium, ground mounted solar are permitted in all districts. Large scale, farm scale are permitted as a special exception in residential, suburban, agriculture 1 and 2, industrial 1 and 2. Not permitted in R1, R2, R3, local business, planned business, general business, medical services, and FEMA designated special flood hazard areas.
Okay, just one thing, if anybody is wondering what is referred as the micro. One example of the micros is that, as you drive down the highway for the emergency lights or some of the signs, they're also used to provide and then actually get stored in a battery is for electric fences will often make use of it, on farm properties. So it's small ones, those, it's just really small ones that are just providing electricity really to just one small item. And it's to eliminate the need for having every single little thing out there that's done, whether it's public or whether it's on private property, actually have a direct connection and served by electric utility.
Under permitting roof-mounted systems, small and medium. If you put a roof-mounted system, you have to have an engineering assessment by an Indiana licensed engineer to determine that your roof is strong enough to hold those. And that is just a standard procedure anyway. It's done regardless if it were a rule we had, they do it anyway on the ones that we've had put in, which we've treated as electrical upgrades.
Because that's one thing that's one thing I've requested from the start, seeing the roof mounted. And by requiring that assessment, we've had only one person though, is they've determined that the condition and the size and the structural integrity of the roof system could not take the additional load, so it's changed to a ground mounted system. So
What's our reasoning for that? Why is that our concern?
it's under the residential code, building code period. If anything is being done that's going to place the additional actual loads, it's a public safety thing, really. Yeah.
Plus the fact some homes are built with 12-inch centers out of 16, 18, so.
Yeah.
That's more of like a building code issue than
It really is.
Yeah, private
ties in
buildings,
it.
some of them.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those you might not want to put on some of these.
You wouldn't want to stand on them.
No. Some of these old pole barns that have 8 foot or more on center.
Yeah.
Application and submission requirements. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Because
It's not much different than any other special exception other than like a detailed site plan of your operations plan for medium, large, and farm scale, signed off by a licensed engineer. Like any other special exception, you need to show your property lines, physical features, roads for the project area, a complete mock-up of what your intentions are. And that follows down through
because
C.
that's all standard, yeah. Yeah, and for example, the drawings of the system on a large enough farm, because one of the things then would be showing on there would be any tiles in the field. That's an example of something that you'd want from the existing conditions on the site plan to show. So show that, streams and things along those lines.
For buffers under G, we provide 2 separate alternative plans for large and farm scale, ground-mounted solar, on the types of plant material that somebody should use for their buffer zone. And this comes straight from the model ordinance.
Yeah, because one of the rationales for that is, number one is, if you're going to have something out of, basically going to be fallow for the life of this solar farm, is it gives an opportunity to restore some soil condition, organic matter, improve the drainage from the farmland. It's pretty much had organic material that used to be there, isn't there?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
They are to remove everything within, what would we say, 150 days? Is that what you're giving them?
Oh, for the,
Removal of the system once it goes no longer functioning?
yeah, as we get down through there,
And if
depending
they
on
don't do
decommissioning.
that, then the area planning has permission to go on the site, go ahead of time and remove it. Do we have any idea of what the cost is, remove an acre of that?
Well, what would happen is, that's one of the reasons also, the bonds are required.
Okay.
And then the bonds are reassessed at a 3-year period of time. Okay, then to actually get to the point to require to remove them, I'm sure it would take then, not just, here's the order, but you probably would need to go through really with the court to get the clearance for it. Would that be a good assumption there?
Depending on what they look like, yeah.
Yeah.
But you need to have bonded up because we need an estimated cost, what's it gonna take to take an acre of those things out. If you got 1,000 acres,
Right.
quite a cost involved
Yeah, what-
if they don't do their job.
Yeah, well, that's like one of the things that's mentioned about the bonds at the meeting that Mr. Munson and I went to, is that when you're looking at at those, you do not include potential, recycling scrap costs into the bond. It's strictly the cash cost. Yeah. So I would assume if, for example, this is just an assumption, that perhaps then is what you could possibly do then is to, number one, just not the bond, but with that then grants the authority or the ownership of the person, the county removing it, to then to help use the recycling materials as then get the financial return. I don't know about that. That might be one aspect. But because it could be, and it's pretty expensive to actually do the removal and everything that's required.
Maybe that cost come back on the landowner if he's not,
No, they're set up to be from the actual company, the entity with it.
I know, but he's the one that's permitted it.
Yeah.
And now we're having to go in and take it out of there and hopefully the cost will be reflected ahead of time and the bond will help cover the cost.
And that's often is one of the things that's brought up in some of the contract and the details between the property owners and then the developer. Because there's also, the contract between the developer and the property owner and those who are leasing the property for the project. That included in that is that because that's also typically included also in the lease agreements. Which
They go
is,
belly up, they forget a lot of contracts.
well, that's one of the ones also is with the, whereas it's just like whether it's wind energy or anything else, is if you're working on projects like that, and you're working with a developer, you really want to have the attorney that you, and ideally, the property owner group, with then an attorney that really does specialize in this.
You got an attorney too, oh Lord.
Well,
So really with this one, they need to look at whether they want A or B.
yeah, that's an alternative, yeah.
Are you guys seeing that?
And I know Dale had a question about no insecticide being permitted on the site.
Well, other than the idea with the insecticide part is if you're trying to also, pollinators, because you don't want to blast it with insecticides. So that's part of it also. If you're trying to encourage the growth of native plant species, you really don't want to blast it with Roundup. And so there is a provision for certain places to actually use the insecticides or herbicides for limited uses.
But I mean, if you think we need to remove that from on A and B, I mean, we can certainly, everything's on the table, so. But that's the reason to natural native pollinators.
Yeah, because it's also trying to do things where there's aspects of it that are going to be, looking at a big environmental picture also.
And that continues on to the next page. Foundations, certified from an engineer for the foundations of solar panel racking, communication lines between solar banks, granted by the BZA.
And a lot of these things are also comparable to some of the things that were discussed about, because of the investment, the huge investment that gets made by these companies is that hopefully you're not getting someone who's a fly-by-night who's going to try to do things slipshod. It's going to be someone that's really, it's well-financed. And usually it's going to be a company that's, okay, it isn't cash out of pocket. This is someone who has the ability to bond to significant amounts of money.
Stormwater and MPDS.
Because this is one of the ones like, it's one of the items I have the most concern about the language or what's requiring there, because there's still questions I think I need to get answered because, okay, speaking with someone with Connersville Utilities, she was at a conference the other day about changes to the, both stormwater and Rule 5, or Rule 13 and Rule 5. And they're going to change it from a rule because to, I forget how she phrased it, but the idea is that if it's a rule, then you got to go back through, and anything that you do, you got to go all the way back through a long rule process to get it approved. And there's still things that have to be approved through the state of Indiana, through IDEM. So there's a lot of things with it that, and so I want to, that's one of the things I want to, use someone who has more information about that, and Gary will be another one. I think he'll be maybe providing some guidance with that.
And any structure built has to meet the Indiana Uniform Building Code and the National Electric Code. Additional aviation protection, so not within 500 feet of an airport or approach. And then the big one, abandonment and decommissioning of ground-mounted solar energy systems, the 150 days after it's considered abandoned, what removal consists of, so not only the physical removal of solar panels, racking, transmission lines, but also the disposal of all solid and hazardous waste in accordance with local, state, and federal laws. So, and then stabilization and revegetation of the site to minimize erosion. So you're not just going to leave dirt once it is removed. And very similar to that on small, medium, and large scale on that 150-day rule. Then farm scale decommissioning, before you can even get a permit, you have to have a decommissioning plan approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, recorded with the Fayette County Recorder, cross-reference the deeds and deeds of all associated project parcels. And you guys can read there everything that is required of the decommissioning agreement. And then the restoration and reclamation requirements. So not only do you have to move it, you have to restore it to pre-construction as it was before you started your project.
Does that include cadmium testing?
Well, what that will be is the whatever materials are actually there. I understand with the more recent systems, what they have is there's very little in the way of any types of leaching and contamination coming off of the materials.
So under that restoration, it's not only to surface grade, but soil profile. So whatever was in the soil when you started, there better not be anything additional in the soil. That's what the soil profile is referring to. further in the agreements, so under F on page 9, bonding. Bonding is required, not to exceed 125% of the demolition cost, up to $250,000. And that gets reassessed on 3-year increments. And we can always
That's a
change.
question I've got to ask.
Yeah, we can always change that number from
Who's going to
250.
keep track of that 3 years?
Okay, good question.
I know government too well to know that 10 years go by, we forgot all about it. Okay.
And
So
then
who's
what,
going to put the bell in the cat?
right, and then why do we have a maximum there?
Okay.
Because that, the maximum was just a reference from the model solar
Yeah.
ordinance.
Yeah, because looking at it there with, you know, the discussion is there, it seems pretty, small.
Open-ended, yeah, and
It's pretty open-ended and,
I trust you, Bill, in 3 years you'll be looking at it, but then you may not be here, and next guy's gonna say, why do you mean 3 years?
well, in 3 years, I will be eligible to change over to, the Medicare.
There you go.
So we can,
So it'll put me a little closer to retirement.
so yeah, we can remove the up to
Yeah.
maximum 250,000, but
I'm not
based
telling you
on,
to do that, I was asking what the
Yeah.
motivation for that was. I mean,
Yeah. And, yeah, it's the, I guess that's a question could be asked is, was the purpose for that, whether that's for
I think in the
legal
model,
reasons or, well, it came from the model, but,
and I think, you know, the model might only say 150,000.
yeah, but it's, I guess part of that is taking a closer, really, I think this whole part with the bond and financial assurance is probably the thing that probably needs the most critical eye, which is why I put it in multiple places, is that
sure.
we're getting into Jeff Westling territory
Yeah,
here.
I'm okay with a lot of the language. I think I would entertain getting rid of that maximum or at least bumping it up. $250,000 sounds like a lot, but you're doing 300 or 400 acres, that might not go very far.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
What we are going to have battle though, and this is every one of these, is they're really pushing to get away from the bonds. The bonds are somewhat cost prohibitive. So they're trying to get, you know, these letters of credit and these kind of things saying, you know, they want a bank to be able to tell us, hey, we can take care of them. But, so just go ahead and expect that. And that language they will have. I mean, very rarely are they getting into these and they're saying, yep, we want to do the bond, we want to do it how you have it. They try to get out of that.
I guess that's another one.
Another thing they want to do, if they do a bond, then they want de-escalating every 5 years type thing. They want to go pretty.
Jim, once these, I don't know enough about this, but do they, once a big one starts up, do they shut it down for any particular reason for 6 months, a year or something?
No, I think they go at it heavy until it
drops.
And we're not to a point where we know what happens at the end of the day. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
that
never
was my
reached the
thing,
end
I
of
was
it.
thinking about it,
Right.
you know,
We're
do
still
they get
too
to the
early
year,
to-
they get to the year time, then they turn it, or they haven't run it for whatever reason, then they turn it back on so that they got another.
We don't know. And my answer is, my other question is that I have with them that I think we can't really answer because nobody's able to answer it,
Right.
is what happens in 20 years when the technology's changed? Are they going to find and replace these things?
Right.
Or is it going to be better to find another, you know, I don't, those are valid questions to think about. And that's, honestly, I don't have as much fear about decommissioning on these as I did with wind. If they went away, that's an eyesore. These aren't as much of an eyesore. So these technically don't impact neighbors quite as much. I'm not saying they don't, and I would certainly listen to arguments that they do. It just appears that they don't off the cuff, that they don't impact neighbors. So the decommissioning is not, the other thing I've had, these are going to be in agricultural lands. Right. Generally, they're not going to be, they're usually in agricultural lands. There's going to be motivation for the owner of the land to get rid of these if they're not getting money from them anymore, you know? So decommissioning is important, but maybe not as important as some other projects. But I don't know I have no clue what the cost of decommissioning one of these things are. That's why the maximum, I don't know. And then the other part is 125% of the cost of demolition and removal. You could have 5 different engineers come up with 5
different numbers.
way different range numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's something would come in then with the periodic reassessment of the demolition values.
Mhm.
Costs.
And then road repairs, so.
Yeah, that's
person-
another one I have a big, not necessarily have issues with this, but that's something I really want us to pay a lot of attention to. You don't think about it, but you're gonna have a lot of trucks, and generally on roads that are not expected to have semi after semi after semi for months at a time, bringing equipment and things. So there's going to be a lot of damage, so we
We already
really
had to deal with that in paper. I mean, in subdivisions and stuff, we're putting semi-trailers
Yeah.
on subdivisions that weren't made for
And
that.
you're gonna have that with these, you're gonna have them on country roads, so it's something to think about. I would encourage the road use agreement. I would encourage to have language that says that, if it's located in the county, the highway department has to approve the road use agreement. If it's located in the city, which would be rare, the street department would have to approve the road use agreement. And the reason I say that, the highway department's gonna be more equipped to know if they're comfortable with it than we are. Right? They're gonna know what tonnage is gonna cause damage to this type of road and that type of road, and what the cost will be to repair it.
Yeah,
Well,
so
and
they
that could
approve, and then we need, then of course the commissioners would be then to
You
actually
also
sign
make-
off on the agreement.
Yeah,
Of
right.
course. Yeah.
Well, that could also come into the county council when you're looking at the highway department coming in more with funding for roads. So we're
course.
looking at having these things put in. We need to have a thicker pavement put in for.
Of course.
You might want to look back at the next ERA contract that they signed with the county, because it did have information there about how they would maintain the roads after the construction
Sure.
was done. And there was legal language in that was accepted by the Commissioners' Council and farmers.
Do you think we have one of those?
Oh, I've got it in my records.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a big box of records for that one.
I think it's going to be given a heads up because they do solar as well as wind energy, and they still have properties on Posey Township that are under contract still.
Does anybody have any other additions or suggestions to the solar draft?
Yeah. Now, what I would ask is, because I know Brian went through that pretty quickly, and we have 3 members who weren't here this evening. But in the meantime is to, everybody could really dissect this as much as you can. Also, you, I mean, members of the public get a copy also. But, I mean, it's because, we need public comments and public response. And I'm of the opinion it's better to get as much as possible to try to take care of as many concerns before we get to the point of holding a public hearing.
The only thing I recall was more residential than a commercial parcel like this, but where our property was out in Utah, they came in the valley and actually, you mentioned Tesla. They were working with Utah Power and Light, which later became Rocky Mountain Power and Light, and they were going to homeowners, and they said, well, there won't be any charge to you, we're gonna put solar panels, if your permission, with the contract, put solar panels on your roof, and it'll run right into the grid, no energy storage system, which is a lot cheaper that way, and reduce their energy bill. And so, many people signed up for that. Several years later, I heard that when people were trying to sell their properties, some of the legalese was in such written up that they couldn't sell the properties. So I don't know how it was written because I wasn't familiar with it, but that's what I heard.
Yeah.
And they finally got it straightened out, but there was very, very unhappy people.
Yeah.
Because they essentially owned the roof on their house, basically.
Yeah.
It was driven up. So you have to, I don't know if this is something you guys need to look at or.
Well, yeah,
or if it's
because,
part of
yeah, because,
this or whatever.
well, it's interesting because, I mean, it's residential, but, yeah,
That was company driven, where we're looking at individual driven. If I want to put one on my house, I come to you to get permission. It's not gonna be like this guy in the corner and say, hey, we're gonna put your whole subdivision.
Well, this was kind of like commercial because it was Utah Power and Light.
Yeah.
They were going to accept all the energy from these homes in southern Utah that was producing this power, and it was all going on.
Much bigger than you got out there, they need to put them in houses.
Well, it was a lot of
Put those
people
on
had
those mountaintops,
to
you'd be
Because you got sunlight out there like 8 85% of the year.
Yeah.
But the ones that were attracted, they didn't have their own systems, they were attracted because reduced their energy bill, they didn't have any cost of putting it on the roofs. And these were homes, probably better construction homes, 80s, 90s, 2000 built homes, so their roofs could take the load.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was the way it was written up, the Utah Power and Light, which again, I said, became Rocky Mountain Power and Light, essentially owned their roofs. So that when they were selling their property, they had to have like permission from, I guess, maybe those guys to sell their house. I don't know how, it didn't flow with the home, you know, so I don't know how it was written up, there's something to be aware of.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the ones, sort of thing, you know, not thinking about it, but on the private level is the, looking at the, you know, the individual homeowners is, it's something significant like that. It's the, yeah, especially if they're approaching in multiple homeowners at the same time.
Oh, yeah, they had
It's
hundreds of houses under contract
Yeah.
in my
I don't
area.
know
That'd be
I
sort
don't know
of,
if that's our forte. I don't know that
no,
we did.
no, it wouldn't be
Yeah.
us, but that's the sort of thing where if it's a homeowners group,
Yeah.
then you can pool the cost on, you know, experienced, knowledgeable attorneys in that particular aspect of law.
Yeah. Home occupation under number 2, looking back from a few months ago. The big thing is the tiered system, moving to a 3-tiered system on home occupations. Something that became apparent in 2020 is people working from home became more and more common. Our zoning code does not permit you to work from home without a special exception. The way the language is written doesn't allow that, so we need to change that language to.
We're most of the way there.
Yeah. So,
But I haven't, with this, and then of course with the hearings today, and then dealing with this, I haven't had the opportunity to dig back into that, and until we really get things taken care of with the solar energy language, is that I really don't want to dig deeply into another section of the ordinance. Because it's nice to dream that you can do multiple parts at one time, but the practical side of it is, it really isn't practical.
Yeah, I was in a class today, a guy in California sat there, and he's about 120 of us students across the country. He's giving a program on use PAP. I mean, they're not there in his house.
Yep.
Does that take a special exception to do
Well, that's the sort of thing right
Yeah.
there is, because if there is no impact,
Yeah.
there is no noticeable that, okay, you don't have visitors, you're not, you're not having a lot of sales in and out of the house
Yeah.
right there. You're not, you
like a
use
beauty
his office.
shop or something like that?
Exactly,
Yeah.
but things along those lines, if there is nothing that would indicate that there's something other than a dwelling there, it should be no permits for it. Now, the one thing that can prohibit it, though, they can still be prohibited from doing that in covenants. They can still prohibit things like that.
but as it is right now, yeah, your question, if somebody today, technically it's against the zoning code to host their Zoom meeting from their house.
Money back.
So under the tiered system, let me just read this from an earlier draft. A tier 1, no permit required for home offices, telecommuting, internet-based businesses, including internet sales or similar uses that do not require signs or visitors. Home crafts and individually order or customized items, including woodworking, sale of produce raised on property. In rural districts, agriculture and natural resource products raised or produced on a property where a dwelling is located require no permit. And then under tier 2, this would be staff approval, which is different than our current process, which requires a special exception for all home-based businesses. So if you have no sign, no more than one visitor at a time, no employee other than family, example, personal services, business services, individual instruction, including tutoring and personal training, individual counseling, a one-station barber or beauty shop, including manicure, and no more than 2 transient guest rooms. So if you wanted to have an Airbnb. And then on tier 3, which is would be somebody wanting to have a true business with a sign and an entrance, that would still require the special exception.
And basically, it's the things that would have the greater potential to be a nuisance. Yeah, and have a negative effect on the properties in the residential neighborhood. Okay, oh, I want to give everybody then an update where it stands on the permit program software. Okay, this is the third week of communicating with with the person who's running our project. So what I have delivered already to everyone is I have delivered to them a lot of the documents I have. They're in the process of, including those identifying the ones that can actually be, basically things that can be auto-filled, So what I'm working on right now, now I'm working on the applications. We've had discussions with, then we can set it up, for example, is every other, not through me, but every permit, potentially with the county or the city entity, they can at least link over to those. So the idea is they can then link to the application and say it might be the, for example, with the county. So they can link to a link for the health department, and then to get the forms and then make an application to for the well and septic permits, those type of things. So back when I was in grad school is what streamline your permit process, which was, it sounded nice, but really the technologies weren't there to really streamline. Unless everything is in one office, and that really isn't practical and isn't feasible because you have so many other little boundaries and jurisdictions, whether it's local ordinances, state requirements. So this gives an opportunity to have a bit of a streamlined process because you have one page where at the bottom of it, they can link to every type of permit that they're going to need. So we're getting closer, we're making progress, and so as we go through, is that we can see the direction we're going with these things. And if anybody would like, what I can do is I can email to all the Plan Commission members, also the zoning board members, that has provided two links to two different communities that are making use of their permit system, so you can see kind of how it's set up. So it's these, I think we're going to be in good shape with it. And
Is that a budgeted item, Bill, or is that something you need permission for?
okay, that's one right now. Well, you're going to have at the next hearing. There's going to be because you guys gave me 5,000. So
I
it's.
know we did, but you never know.
Yeah, well,
It's been recommended to go to you, he's gonna need more money.
because because the idea with that was at least get the line item inserted. We don't know how much it was going to be. So you're going to have a request for another 7,000, and then well.
You had to sell a couple horses.
County owns some horses?
Well, I think,
Better than pigs.
And that's a setup, and then there will put in place then is the request for the annual fee, then through my budget. And then with the annual fee is that one of the things with the, even though it's every three years, is that the contract, but as long as you're maintaining the relationship with them, you won't have any increases in the annual.
Well, my question to you is, will you have money in the general fund to help take care of this?
Well, we're starting to actually,
It's your money, I don't care what you do with it.
The answer is right now, no.
Oh, well, now I do care.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons for, one of the things we have in there was, one of part of the base fee was we won't know if it's sufficient yet, but part of the base fee is $25, which pays for this, which would pay for this.
I will say I'd rather give it to you than a lawyer.
You don't mean that. But yeah, we're moving in the right direction on
Yeah.
this software.
Yeah, so, and so it comes down to is then the, and, well, actually, what I was thinking about the other day is what I probably should start including in the, in the monthly report would be, figure out the way with, what it would have been under the old and what we're actually generating new, so we can get an idea how much additional income we're generating for the county through the permits. Yeah, because It's, there's some that's gonna increase a little bit on each of the actual Class 1 permits. And, yeah, now, one that is not gonna be as much as now, lower, the smaller dwellings that were only the $125, well, those are gonna be increased. But people have come in for the new dwellings, then with the additional, with the increase of the amount, which is, I think is, depending upon whether or not they're gonna have, fireplace, a chimney, it's either 200 or 225. Now, the larger dwelling isn't gonna generate as much, but what is generating more are the things that were $50 permits previously. So, all those times I'd have to go out there for a room addition. So those are now accounted for.
Fees are gonna generate fees like you would.
Well, we haven't got them yet.
When they come.
Yeah.
And speaking of director's report,
They will be coming,
I
yeah.
move to the director's report. Do I have a motion to approve the director's report? I have a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. A motion for adjournment.
We'll jump on that one, we'll make a motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any
May I
opposed?
make one quick recommendation before we adjourn?
Yeah.
Do we put the starting time on the next agenda?
Oh, that's a good one right there. Bob made a request, is if the plan commission is, rather than, because we ran on as long as as over an hour with the BZA, if there would be, the council meets at 6 o'clock, if we move it to either 6 or possibly 6:30 to take care of area plan commission business before the BZA.
We can put on the next meeting to talk about for if you want to.
Yeah, well, could be a topic for the next meeting is about,
We got something
so we can
to
have a
talk
discussion. Oh, there's always gonna be plenty to talk about, Bob, you know that. Yes.
We still have a pending motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.